Hello once again everyone. Today we will be covering loops, and in Python there are three types of loops. There are the for and while and range loops. Okay, so we will be going over each one of them, and hopefully it's going to be easy. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Alright, so the first thing we need to remind ourselves with lists, right? So lists are a variable that can hold more than just one value. So usually the values that we saved were like x equal 3 or x equal hello world. And lists are basically the same thing, but you can save more of these variables at the same time. So I can just name a list1, or like, let's name it something meaningful. So let's make fruits equals, and then I'm going to put some fruits here: apple, orange, and banana. Alright, so that's a list basically of three strings or three words. And now we want to make a loop that loops over each one of them. Alright, so how do we do this? First of all, we say the following: for, okay, so just for, and then fruit, and that's just any name that can be just any variable. For fruit, in fruits, so I'm saying go to each fruit here and just name it fruit, alright? And what do we want to do? We want to print this fruit, right? So what this is going to do is going to go over each single fruit in fruits and then print it, okay? So this is going to get updated with each iteration. So the first time it's going to be apple, second time, sorry about that, second time is going to be orange, and the third time is going to be banana. So let's see that into play by running our code. And as expected, apple, orange, and then banana, right? So that was the first type of loop. The second one is the while loop. So the while loop kind of functions a little bit different, and there are different use cases for each kind of loop, but they essentially all do the same thing, and that is iterations, all right? So the while loop is basically a condition. So we would say if we have a variable, for example, called counter, all right? I'm going to set this counter to 0 in the beginning, and then I'm going to say as long as, so while loops is basically like saying as long as, and then a condition, so as long as the counter is less than 5, for example. So I'm saying as long as the counter is less than 5, stay inside this loop. And to remind you, staying inside something means you're indented one level under this, right? So when we wrote if conditions, if true, for example, you write it indented, all right? There is an indentation, which means whatever you're going to write here belongs to this part, all right? So back to the while loop. So as long as the counter is less than 5, which is true in our case, counter is 0, we want to print counter power 2, for example, right? So the first thing is going to be 0 power 2, but if we run this, it's going to run forever. So we have to update our counter so that eventually this condition is going to fail and the loop will end. So we're going to print and then increase the counter by making counter equal counter plus 1. And what we're doing here, we're taking the old value of the counter, which is 0, we're adding 1, and then we're adding the result to the counter. We're overwriting it with an updated value, which is an addition of 1, right? And this next iteration is going to be 1, so 1 power 2 is 1, and then we're going to increase 1 by 1, so it's going to be 2, and then we update this, and then we keep going. And once it reaches 5, 5 is not less than 5, which means, okay, now I'm going to go back to this part, which means I just finished the loop. I'm not going to go inside the loop again. I'm not going to go to this indented part. This is called indentation. So let's see that by running the code. So 0 power 2 is 0, 1 power 2 is 1, 2 power 2 is 4, 3 power 2 is 9, and 4 power 2 is 16. And we didn't print 5 because the counter doesn't allow you to do that. Sorry, the condition doesn't allow you to do this because it stops once you reach 5. If you want to actually include 5, we would make less than or equal 5. So if we run this, now 5 is included. Now, that was the while loop, and now we come to the last type of loops, which is range. So the range is pretty simple. You can have a range of two numbers, and again, it depends on what you're doing, and you're going to decide which type of loop to use. So the range is pretty simple. 4, and then range to I don't know, 20 or something. All right. Sorry, for x in range. So that's exactly like a for loop, okay? But you're setting a range here, all right? So this means x is going to start at 2 and end at 20. So if we print this, print x here, click run, it's going to print from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the range between 2 and 20. And then it stops, sorry, it stops at 19, all right? So it doesn't reach, so if you wanted to reach 20, you would do this as 21, all right? So yeah, it stops at 1 before the number that you put here, okay? So that was the last type of loops, or it's not actually the third type, it's kind of a variant of the for loop. And this was it for loops, and see you in the next video.